Hello, this is Doc Severson for the ReadySetCrypto Premium Newsletter Market Update for Sunday, December 2nd. Before I get into the charts, I've got just a couple of thoughts that I want to share with you guys. Mav and I get this question multiple times per day. Hey, what's your opinion on coin XYZ? Or it could be anything. It could be some kind of project. It could be token. It could be something that's out there that's new. It could be something that's established. But the same question is asked again and again, multiple times per day. What's your opinion on this? And this is really code for, do you think it's going to go higher or lower in the future? So when people ask me that question, generally it implies that they want to know whether or not it's going to go higher or lower. Okay, it's very natural. So what I've learned, though, is after following markets for 2 decades is that I cannot predict the future. When I think the market will zig, it typically zags. What I've learned the hard way is that markets are irrational. They don't care about your perfectly constructed logical argument. You'll go read the white paper, you'll go read everything about this particular project or company, and you'll say, well, based on everything that I put together, looking forward, this should go higher. That's your logical argument, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen like that. This is because people are generally irrational, and they constantly make emotional decisions counter to their own good. I know that if I look back over the last week, I've made emotional decisions that have not necessarily been for my own benefit. And I would challenge you to go back over and inventory your decisions over the last week and see which ones were rational, see which ones were irrational, and see which ones actually ended up helping you move forward. So when you get a collection of a few million people together trading a financial market, you have no hope for a rational result. You're going to get a collective irrational result. This is why markets often trade in the opposite direction of where you think they should trade. And the fact that you think that they should trade in a direction implies that you have a logical opinion of future value, and you might be disappointed. So I've learned to simply let the market tell me which way it wants to go. I know that sounds simple. I know it's harder to do in real life. This is why you need to get practiced at this. I let the market provide the opinion about future value. You have to let go of your own irrational need to understand what the future is. The market, after all, is always right, and it takes investors, new investors to any space, normally a long time before they finally surrender and say, you know what? I really don't know where this is going to go in the future. I don't care what technical studies I've added to my charts. I still don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And it may take you a number of years before you finally get to that point of saying, okay, I give up, no mas. I don't know where things are going to go tomorrow. You can't trade the market that you want, only the one that you have. So here's one more encouragement for me to learn to read what the price is telling you and respect that opinion. Respect the market's opinion and don't try to impress upon the market what your own opinion is. The market's opinion is the only one that counts in this game. With that in mind, let's look at a few selected crypto markets that we follow, and let's see what they're telling us. Let's start by looking at some of the big caps here. We'll start up with Bitcoin as we usually do. And I'm going to say something here which kind of contradicts what soapbox talk that I just talked about. And I'm going to say that I believe that the next 6 months or so are going to be a trader's market. The only reason that I say that is because I've sort of seen this before. I've seen this movie before. I see where we are in the context of the entire bear market. I very much doubt, I think this is a very low probability that we're going to have some seminal event, some kind of trigger event, which is going to cause things to just erupt to the upside. I've never seen a bear market just from the bottom all of a sudden just turn around, pivot, and say, thank you very much, we'll take it from here. Normally, you go through these just torturous, and I've been warning you guys about this for some time now. This capitulation process is not a single binary event. What has to happen is collectively, people must be forced to give up on the idea that this thing will ever rally again. I know that sounds onerous. I know it sounds horrible, Machiavelli and everything like that. I know it makes you want to just turn around and run or turn me off or whatever. But I'm telling you guys, this is how bear markets typically go through a bottoming process, because all the little buy the dippers have got to be punished until this thing finally can achieve escape velocity. Markets normally don't escape the bear until people finally collectively give up and say, well, that's it for me. I'm done. And when we get enough of those people that do that, this is when we do get the liftoff. All of a sudden, we get the disbelief rally that shows up and people just can't believe it. Where was this 6 months ago? Where was this a year ago? Well, it wasn't ready yet. And we just have to go through this process. It's this sort of collective irrationality that has to be expunged from the system. But if I say to you that you can't trade the market that you want, this is the market that we want. Everybody wants the buy and hold market that just never stops going up, right? That's the easiest possible market to trade. Everybody wants that, with few exceptions. There are some perma bears that are out there that just are loving life right now. Those people are kind of difficult to hang around with at a party. So what I'm saying here is that I believe that when you look at a market like this, this represents a different opportunity. It's a different type of character, and this is why I call it a trader's market. Because if you can play within the swings, and if you can play within the swings like the ones that we had here, up and down and up and down. Now, this is extraordinarily difficult to play within these swings. There are some option strategies which cater much better towards that type of market character, but we can't talk about those yet because we really don't have those instruments in play just yet. Again, 2019, I think, will come along and will change things dramatically for that, for the better of retail traders. Now, I know everybody loves to go hate on derivatives and everything like that, and I've been blasted lately in the YouTube comments for saying positive things about derivatives, but, you know, look, this is something I've been trading for the past 15 years is options, and I know the power and the value that they can provide to the retail trader. So we're going to park that topic until we actually have something to work with. But let me just say that in 2019, that will be a real possibility, I do believe. So we're going to be left with a market like this. I think we're going to have extraordinary rallies, and these extraordinary rallies will provide hope to the crypto market space. We're going to get people all worked up and say, my God, here it comes. This is the one we've been waiting for the last year and a half. And then it's going to dump. And you're going to see gloom like you've never seen before. Like, oh, you're kidding. It's almost like the same type of attitude of like late Christmas morning, everything's been opened, and you start to play with the boxes instead of the toys, right? It's that same kind of thing where it's like, oh, I'm depressed. This is terrible. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, like a phoenix from the ashes, we're going to get another rally that comes along. And everybody's going to go, this is the one. And then we're going to be disappointed one more time. And finally, this is where people just get, it just gets corrosive, right? It just gets fatiguing. And they say, you know what? I'm kind of done, and I'm going to wait until the rally comes. Wake me when it's over. And those are the people that are not going to get on board until this thing rallies dramatically. And by then it's going to be too late, because typically you'll be jumping on the top of a rally and you're going to have to learn that lesson all over again. So again, take my words with a grain of salt here, because this is my attempt to look at what's happening today and apply lessons of the past towards this. And the reason that I say lessons of the past is typically when we see a move like this, let me clean this up a little bit. Typically when we see kind of the, you know, that capitulation, this is sort of the first capitulation that comes along. This is a huge disappointment for everybody over the last month or so. Like, oh, I thought we had it. And I'm telling you guys, like when we have a descending triangle, 70% of the time it's going to break to the downside. So we try to be consistent with that. But now we're sort of left with this sort of, you know, depressing kind of like, when will it end kind of thing. And I'm telling you, it may not end anytime soon. It's not going to end soon enough for most people. So let's play the hand that we're dealt with. And what I'm seeing right now, especially when it comes to Bitcoin and just about everything else that I looked at in the top coins here, is that here comes the next flag. Here comes the next flag. So the way that we're going to look at this is we're going to go down to something like a 4-hour chart, and there it is in all of its glory and beauty. this is a gorgeous little pattern, right? So this is what we're going to be left with. We're going to be left with flags. Can't trade the market that we want. Let's trade the market that we have. Now, unfortunately, without a good set of derivatives, it's going to be difficult for most people to take this thing short. Now, some people will have access to tools like BitMEX, which unfortunately I do not. I can get into the testnet and play around with that. That may be one of the projects that I look at in the next 30 days here, is to help people understand how to use BitMEX if you can legally trade that. So we'll maybe be looking at that. There's going to be other futures contracts coming along. There's other projects that are out there that I was not even aware of until I popped my head up last week, which may give people some real opportunity to play markets to the short side. Now, a lot of people, what I'm finding is they have a real problem trading to the short side because all of a sudden they feel like they're a turncoat. Well, oh, if I do that, then I'll become part of the problem, won't I? Well, no, again, not really, because shorts can get squeezed out. So there's no guarantee because you take something short that it's going to continue going lower. You could be part of the solution if you get squeezed out because you're going to have to buy your position back to get out of it later on. Now, again, with these things, what I found with TradingView is that you can add an alert on the trend line. And this works really well. So BTC USD crossing the trend line only once you can be notified of this. Now, just a word while I have this up, you can actually add this to different studies. So in other words, you could add something like the Bollinger Bands, right? So you could add the, oops, wrong one here. Let's add the real Bollinger Bands, okay? So we've added the Bollinger Bands, and we can put an alert on the Bollinger Bands to, if it crosses, so if the Bollinger Band, so if actually, yeah, so if the price crosses the Bollinger Band, you can actually add an alert on here, but be careful with this because what I found is that sometimes what happens is the bands or the study can become so responsive that the price never really gets a chance to like close outside of it, and it never fires off the alert. So just be careful. One of the things that I would recommend in a case like that is you can always put in just a static alert. So you can just put a static alert in as a horizontal price that if it crosses that price, then you can be alerted to that. So that's a much more reliable alert. Make sure that you know that. So if we look across the major coins here, we're seeing essentially the same thing. Beautiful, beautiful bear flag setting up. You know, again, with a face only a mother could love, right? So if you want the markets to go higher, you don't want to see these perfectly proportioned bear flags setting up, which have a lower high and a strong propensity to break to the downside eventually, just when people think that they're going to break higher. Because you'll read, you know, it's funny because to my point, I mean, you'll read these little articles and you'll say, you'll read the article, the tone of the article is from people that don't know any better. They say, you know, hey, this coin is recovering. You know, it's up X percent because that's what people want to read. But they're not doing anybody any favors because they create the same problem because people with weak hands tend to go long here. Then as the price breaks underneath the flag, all of a sudden they're scrambling to get out. They have to sell it to close the position, which helps to drive the price down further. Traders become their own worst enemies when they operate as a collective herd. Another thing that we get into is this whole kind of like religious argument about buying the dip is that, look, in a primary downtrend, buy the dip means that you're trying to catch a falling knife and you're predicting the future that, hey, this is going to be the low watermark of what's going on. Wait until things turn around. If you want to know how to do that, put on the weekly chart and ask yourself, okay, is that a primary uptrend or a downtrend? I would say most people would be able to identify this as a primary downtrend without much trouble. Okay, so in a case like this, regardless of what the coin is, ask yourself on a weekly chart basis, is this an uptrend or a downtrend? Or is it at the very least, is it an upswing? In this case, no. Wait for the upswing. Now there's opportunity within the upswing. You can certainly play within these swings to the upside, but again, go back to what I said a few minutes ago, this is going to be a trader's market for the next 6 months or so. It's not going to be a buy and hold, hodl type of market. It's going to be much more for traders that are going to be looking for swings. And then once the swing is played out, then it's going to dump. Once everybody identifies that, hey, this one's heading higher, all of a sudden it's going to take the fade. It's going to work to the downside again. That's kind of what we're seeing with a lot of the swing trade candidates that we're seeing. Like here was one, Metaverse. So once Metaverse popped its head up, it's kind of like a whack-a-mole game that you play at the fair. Once it pops its head up and says, hey, I'm heading higher, all of a sudden I have a weekly chart heading higher, it's going to get slammed. And this is what happened with Metaverse. As soon as it caught our attention on this one and set up the next trade, all of a sudden, wham, the obvious trades are going to get faded. So across the board, like Chainlink was a good example of one that popped its head up and said, hey, I'm trending higher. And all of a sudden, wham, along come the bears. You know, once something trends higher. So our goal is to find these things as soon as we possibly can. As soon as we possibly can, that we're starting to see the beginning of a weekly swing higher. Let's identify, let's use that weekly swing higher as the anchor chart. We can go down to the daily chart and then identify these as they begin to break above the 200-day moving average or whatever filter that you're going to use for these, and try to take these things long. Try to jump on these things as they show the next consolidation and do stair stepping. And then once everybody identifies that, hey, this one is, you know, this one's breaking out of the pack, this puppy is escaping the box, you're going to see it corralled back inside of it. It's going to become a viable shorting candidate. And then all of a sudden things are going to get more difficult. So the only one I'm seeing on the screener today that I kind of like is, I don't even know how to pronounce this, Quash, Q-Ash, however you pronounce it. I'm sure somebody will correct me. We're going to add this one to the watch list. So we're going to put this one onto our swing trade watch list. Okay. Now let's take a greater look at this one. So this one was consolidating in a huge manner for quite some time. Let's go over to the weekly chart. Okay, weekly chart's still a downtrend, okay? So maybe the probability is this thing is going to pop up for a little bit, maybe show another setup or two, and then wander back down again. The probabilities do favor that this is a weekly downtrend, weekly primary downtrend, so any rally back up is eventually going to get faded back down. But we may have the opportunity to take the next swing. Let's see where it sets up here. So right now we've had a nice, you know, big consolidation. So let's go throw our chop and Bollingers on here. So we see this huge Bollinger squeeze, ton of energy on here. Tough to time these things because look at how many false breakouts we had from this range. And eventually the real one comes along right when it was at max energy. Couldn't stand it any longer. And we went into exhaustion on this. So now we're almost up to breakout level again. And we can look to maybe take this one. We're going to add an alert on this QSH BTC crossing value. It looks like this is 5,600 Satoshis on this. So we're just going to create that alert and let us know. You can see this is added to the alert list over here. Big volume on here, a little bit of selling volume because this started high and then got sold into, but I like the consolidation, like the energy. This one typically will wait until it gets up to 62 or higher before it does break out, but we don't have that much history on this dude. And one look over here on the weekly chart just to make sure that there's enough gas in the tank. And yes, we do. We have plenty of energy on here. So there's nothing that's fundamentally preventing this other than the weekly chart, the Bollinger Bands, the prices beyond the Bollinger Bands, but we don't necessarily care that much about this. We certainly have tons of energy left for this one left to go. I would actually like to see this one consolidate in this range for another couple of days. And then if we see a breakout attempt on good volume, this is not the most liquid coin that's out there. This might be a good swing candidate. I think we maybe have one more good swing in the tank on this one, and then this will probably set up as a candidate fade, just like everything else is. All right, guys, that is it for this weekend's report. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tolerating the soapbox, and we'll see you back here on Monday night.